This is Skill Forge Heroes. Our forest crossing is under attack. Tentacle creatures are approaching. Only our band of heroes can defeat all 5 waves to lure out the final boss and vanquish it. You clear a wave by defeating all special enemies. And as a side goal, you get more experience the more of these vines you defeat. But don't take too long, because after some certain time, after 6 turns and after 8 turns, you will get some growth events which increase the capabilities of those vines. Every player gets to select a primary and a secondary class. Each pairing has some unique combinations that are only possible with that pairing. In a turn, first the players act and then the enemies in a defined order. After that, there's a phase where some board effects might happen. A player's turn always has one movement, one step on the board, as well as using one of their 4 abilities. Let's start with an easy one. This one is just attack 2. If it's not otherwise specified, it's always a melee attack, meaning it has to be in range 1. You have to stand in the same field as the enemy. And also you can only target enemies. But there are different kinds of skills. For example, this one applies the power buff in range 1 and can only target an ally. So, this is the core skill. It tells you what it does, in what range it does it, and who to target. But if you now add some modules to it, for example, this one can take one more buff and one more modifier module, you can enhance the capabilities of this skill. Here in this case, I've also added Swiftness 1, which is another buff. So as a result, I can target an ally in range 1, give it power 2 and Swiftness. I will not go over the details of buffs in this video. Let's quickly talk about combat. Enemies come in 3 versions, normal, elite or boss. Depending on the version, they have different stats. To defeat an enemy, you have to deplete the life points to 0. But you need to have an attack value that overcomes their defense value to even deal a single damage. Your attack has to overcome the defense within a single turn, not within a round, meaning that you have to find ways to overcome the enemy's defense. Means like stacking power, using flank of an ally, doing a coordinated attack, using traps, or some other means this game offers. It's not easy to kill an enemy on your own. Team play is really incentivized here. Enemy behavior is somewhat predictable. For example, the behavior of the enemy is written right here, and their attack value is written right here. However, your defense is not predictable. You have to roll a die for your defense for this turn. Let's assume 2 players are in range of this enemy. One has rolled a 5, one has rolled a 19. So this enemy will target the one with the lowest defense, being this one, and also their attack value overcomes their defense of 5. So it's a hit on this player. You can mitigate this randomness by staying close to your tank or someone with the guard buff, by being invisible, or just by simply having smart positioning or outplaying the enemies. Let's assume you have cleared the first wave by defeating all the special enemies. What happens next? Well, first of all, the board state stays persistent. You stay where you are, enemies that you haven't killed are still standing around, the campfires that you have used will stay used, traps stay where they are, you keep your buffs, and a lot more stuff. Then you will reset the turn marker, and you will start spawning the next wave. The next wave will be progressively harder by, for example, having more of these special enemies being spawned than in the previous wave, and also vines will be added to the board, so the board state might be a bit more crowded. Now it's time to level up your character as well. Spend 1 experience points on getting a level 2 bard skill and exchange any of your skills with that, or exchange any of your skills with a level 1 of your secondary class. That's one thing. Another thing you can do is just draw 2 cards from your modules from your primary and your secondary class, reveal them, and keep one of them. Let's do all of that simultaneously. And let's do that another time. And now we have a huge pool of things you can do. You can choose one of these 4 cards, one of these 4 cards, and one of these 4 cards. Also, you get to keep the stuff that you already got, and you can rearrange your modules. So let's assume I'm just not happy with the selection I'm having at all. So no worries there, because what you can do instead of picking one of those modules to use later, you could also just discard one. For example, this one, you can discard it and then replenish one of the campfires. This is one of the rare and only ways of how you can actually turn over a campfire and use its healing capability in the next wave. You can pause the video and find some unique combinations yourself if you like, but I can also point out some for you. Here's an obvious combination. So I want to apply invisibility to the whole party, so I'm taking this one. This is a rogue module, and now I'm taking the core of the board, which is allowing me to target all allies. From the last row, since it's a cool buff, I will also take the flanking. And from my previous run, I will take the target cooldown -1, and suddenly I have a really strong whole party buff that will apply invisibility, flanking, and reduce targets of every single one I'm targeting by -1, while also moving them by 1 space. Here is a utility decision I could do. For example, this module wasn't as powerful in my playthrough. It's hard to really get an ally that is next to an enemy as well. So, because the skill allows me to command an ally to attack 3, I could maybe decide to take this module and make me the target itself, so I'm commanding myself to attack. Or I could use this module to make the target, which being my ally, move by 1, so it can even reach enemies 1 space far ahead. Maybe I figured out I was too squishy in the last round and just barely survived, so maybe another decision could be to take this skill, which applies additional buff stacks on all the buffs that are in this one. And I could extend it with invisibility, for example, and make it target myself. So in this case, I would be applying 3 buff stacks to myself when I'm using this one. And since I'm targeting myself, I also get the benefit of reducing any one of my cooldowns by 1. So maybe I'm reducing the cooldown of the skill immediately by 1, so that I can use it every 2 turns instead of every 3 turns. Here's another cool one. I could be using this rogue tech skill, which attacks and you have to roll a d6 to determine the value of the attack. I can mitigate the chance by using this module, for example, which increases +1 to all chances, so increasing the die roll of this one, for example. And at the same time, I can apply this 1/6 chance to deal double damage. This in itself makes it still pretty random, but don't worry about it, because maybe in the next turn I will be finding something that increases luck, because this is all in the identity of the rogue as well as the bard, so there's some synergy going on there. Let's talk about some of the strong points of this game. First and foremost, team play. To kill an enemy, you really have to overcome the defense of that enemy. But usually, you on your own, you are not strong enough to do that. So you need to find ways as a team to actually overcome that breakpoint. Another one is limitations in the game. For example, this core can only be used on a target enemy if they are the only enemy in that space, meaning that you cannot attack targets that are in a bulk, and usually these vines come in a bulk. So you'll have to ask an ally to push them around for you and create more appealing targets. And these kind of limitations are plentiful in this game. For example, the mage depends on campfires, so another class would have to replenish them for them. Or the ranger is strong at attacking staggered targets, so another class for you should stagger the enemy so that you can easily attack it with your stronger attacks. The buff system also encourages team play. For example, guard and flanking actually are best when used with allies, and power and luck should be best stacked on an ally, which benefits from those the most. With the skills you're selecting, you can mitigate the flaws that your team has. So even in the phase where you're developing your character, it's advised to talk in a team. For example, if your team is lacking mobility, then maybe you should focus more on that direction. Replayability in this game is really high, and partly that's because of the exploration of the skill system. People really want to dive into a new class combination to just figure out what they actually offer, because of the unique possibilities that each combination delivers. Character progression in this game is so much quicker than in other dungeon crawlers, where you usually have to meet for 50 sessions until you're finally done. Here, you feel really powerful and you increase really quickly in your potency. After you've defeated the boss, you will start a fresh round with a new class combination, or maybe with a new strategy in mind. Setup of this game is also super quick. For example, you'll start the first session by just having 4 of these random spawn events, so you will have to spawn 4 bulks of enemies basically. and fetch the according cards for that. Set the start marker to 0 and hand out every player 2 of these classes. And from there on, players already do their first decision, like what's my starting loadout? And this is when the game already starts. I want you to actually play the game instead of spending your time with an administrative work. So, meaning, for example, enemies don't have any states. The only state in the game is actually staggering an enemy, which will put them on the side. You don't need to track states. Also, tracking health points is really easy in this game, because most enemies like these vines have only 1 health point. Apart from that, enemies are really easy to be handled. For example, these vines, they don't move. They are plentiful, but handling them during combat is super easy. Or these elite enemies, with their logic is really easy, so you know exactly each turn how to move them and you will be doing that quickly.